Alright, okay, I've got 3 packages, and I got one more thing to show, I guess. I was going to call it special, but I don't know. It's not going to be that special to y'all, because, you know, you don't get to enjoy it. I mean, technically, y'all don't get to enjoy the anime I purchase, other than the fact that they actually look pretty good, and that's, you know, like the main thing I do. But this one, well, you won't even get to look at this thing itself. More on that after all this. But let's you know, get to anime. So only one of these things, I think this one was actually slated to be released today. There was another thing, Infinity something or the other. But this is all that arrived. But fortunately, this will actually be a really expensive update week. So we got Lord of Vermillion, the complete uncut series, which, you know, kind of reminds me that Katana Maidens, you don't want that to be uncut because they've got katanas, you want them to be cutting. Anyways, could have made a comment about sexy leg or sexy arm or something like that, but here I was blabbing my mouth off. Too much to make the joke. Oh, it's region A and B, 12 episodes on 2 discs. So this is a Blu-ray only release. Audio, I see English and Japanese. Special features, Japanese promotional videos, text list, opening and closing songs. Get your blood pumping. I don't know what this is about then. Could be something blood related since they are surrounded by red. Does that mean that they are... I don't know. Anyways, let's just dive on in. You know, we've got 2 pretty simple discs. 1 through 9, 10 to 12. We've got some more. So as you can see, red is a very prominent color here. I think that Vermilion is a shade of red. I could be mistaken. I'm trying to remember if that was the name of this city in the first Pokemon generation, because all of them were color related. But anyways, next up we have Devil's Line. This is a limited edition version, I think. Is it Love or Bloodlust? Oh, so is this a vampire thing? Let's see. Since I recently cut my fingernails, they're kind of shortened. That was a little not as easy, yes. So let's get that off. Figure out how to get this off. There we go. Because I figure it's just a little piece of glue right there, but for some reason it's holding flat pretty strongly. Let's put it on the table over here. Let's take a peek at this first because I see a region A there. I see all 12 episodes plus OVA on 2 discs. English dub, special features, clean opening and closing. Includes Blu-ray, booklet, and soundtrack. Oh cool, so there's a soundtrack in here. Hope it's good. I mean, if that's not vampire, then that's like zombie or something, but most likely vampire. He's crying blood. That's usually not a good sign. So, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, most of the same information here. We have episodes 1 through 9. 10 through 12. And soundtrack. Pretty cool. Hope it's a neat soundtrack. I mean, I guess I'm actually hoping that it's one that actually catches my fancy. Devil's Line manga. I did see some character designs. I saw some manga in there. Ooh, you know what? I don't always do this, but I think I can fit this in there. Nice. And then here we've got 2 stickers. See some sexy heroes. We'll begin with the one that we know has some, I guess. Jeez, that sticker does not want to come off. So then we'll go with the one who really has some. He's the coolest hero on the show. And he's so hot. You know what? Fuck all that noise if they're just being stubborn. 0 to license here. Anyways, region A. English dub. 2 inside the episode videos featuring English voice actors in studio plus dub outtakes. Interview with the English voices of Deku, Bakugo, Mirio, and the ADR director. Alright. Not too different underneath the cover. This really means I should prioritize watching season 3 of this. Even if I'm probably on the verge of watching it with my friend anyways. Hold on. So this is an advertisement for the manga, and this is of course that thing. So okay, so first we got Blu-rays 1, 2, then DVD 1, DVD 2. Got ourselves a little art card. Okay, I thought it was a booklet. There's a lot of art in the back here. Looks like they've got episode numbering, so it's probably related to the episode. So I'm not going to look too closely. 3 art cards. It did say 3 art cards. I'm actually going to move them up here. Pinch them in place alongside these. Well, that's the update, but here's the other surprise. Well, this is pretty big. So, if you couldn't tell from that brief thing, this is, well, technically this is only a box for an EVGA Geforce RTX 2080 Ti. Because, as you can see, well, first of all, this line here made me wonder if it was manufactured incorrectly or somebody had broken in, but actually, as you can see, when I line it all up like that, you can see it's intentionally designed to split off right there and reveal, okay, it opens like this. And the graphics card would normally be in there, but I have already installed it. So, if you don't know what this is, it is basically a really fucking expensive graphics card. And that's why y'all can't enjoy it, because, you know, not only have I already installed the card in the system, but to really enjoy it, I'd have to be able to stream that system, and I don't have that set up yet. I might, not in a couple months. It might still be a while before I can do that. But basically, you know, I'm updating my graphics card to make sure my VR runs completely 100% smooth before I update my VR to the index, which will have. Anyways, that's this week's anime DVD collection update. So my friend and I finished Dragon Ball Super Volume 8, which actually wasn't a lot. It was just 2 episodes that we hadn't seen. And, you know, it's entertaining. Would have been nice to be able to keep going a little bit, because, you know, it's not, of course, at a stopping point. But, you know, it is what it is. What happened in those 2 episodes? Kind of interesting stuff, I guess. I'm not sure if there's too much I can talk about. It is doing Tournament of Power stuff after all, and you know, there's just a lot of neat little things happening, but I guess I'm just waiting to see where it all goes as well. I'm not feeling too impatient about that, fortunately, so, you know, that kind of indicates it's entertaining enough. But, yeah, well, I guess we'll have to see. You know, this is getting dangerously close to Frieza's 5-minute warning thing, which turned out to be 2 weeks of episodes or something. Anyways, I also watched Kemono Friends Season 1. I ended up defaulting to the English dub because, you know, usually I just default to the English dub, and if I don't like it for some reason, I'll switch to Japanese with English subtitles. But if I choose to go one way or the other in advance, it's usually because I suspect that the nature of the characters would be such that I would only get the true appeal of them by watching that. So, for example, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, since the characters were what made that show, well, since it was obvious that it was the characters that the people really loved, That one and they just loved it a lot. I just kind of prioritized watching that one Japanese with English subtitles, even though there was a dub. This one, I haven't actually gotten the impression that the dub is necessarily, or that the original Japanese voices are necessarily the reason people like it, I guess. It's not as strong there. And I can kind of see that while watching it. One of my online friends put it away where they chose the best voice actors for Who auditioned for each of the individual parts, but they didn't necessarily get the best actors for those parts per se, and that makes sense, because the best actors for those parts would have been the original Japanese voice actors, because they would have defined it for anybody that watched it subtitled first. So this seems to be one of those anime, but if you're watching it for the first time dubbed, it works just fine. It's interesting because you kind of get this impression it's set up as a sort of educational show, but it doesn't fall into pretty much any of the same pitfall traps there. Basically, when the characters go from place to place, you feel like they've got a goal beyond what's here. You feel like they've got a goal in terms of understanding each other that's not, trying to make the audience understand them, but the characters themselves actually feel like they want to understand each other, so they're actually interacting. And it's good because it's both ways, because it isn't too uncommon for an educational show about animals, for example, being about the animals and not about the animals being interested in the humans as well. So the fact that it goes kind of both ways is really great. It plays some good mystery. The atmosphere is surprisingly complex, where it feels eerily post-apocalyptic without being like grim. It seems very happy about it, but you watch it and you kind of can't help but think something is going on here. And this isn't like it doesn't seem like a super hidden dark thing like some other anime. I'm trying to remember its name, but I can't remember its English name. But there's stuff out there that plays off happy, but has this vibe of, holy shit, this is really messed up. And those are really cool. And this doesn't feel like it's, holy shit, that's really messed up. This just kind of feels out of place. And not like it's a don't belong there thing, but rather you can't quite feel like that is here and now. It feels like it is some future. I guess Splatoon kind of does similar sorts of things, where you just have that feeling that something is off. And let's see, there was more to it. Oh yes, and then there's also, it's really common for educational type shows to get lost in the current episode, whereas this one, each individual episode does seem to have its own, oh well, here's a legitimate problem that isn't necessarily a straightforward thing to solve. And we're not talking about complex philosophical problems like Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, but rather, there's no bridge. And that's some interesting water. That's some pretty, it's not exactly rapids or anything like that, but it does not seem like it would be, I don't know. It seems like it is something to overcome. And overall, it works pretty interestingly. It plays off the mysteries pretty well. I don't think all of them are necessarily a surprise per se, but they are definitely enjoyable. And, the friends, of course, have pretty cute designs, and they do surprisingly cute little mannerisms. For example, in the first episode, and this is an example of how the show goes back and forth, our main character, who doesn't know what she is, meets Serval, and they eventually start traveling to the library, I guess, which is, it's what's set up in the first episode as, okay, well, here's a goal. Okay. And it teaches us these interesting things about the Serval, but then eventually they reach a point where they have to rest in the shade, and there's a couple of interesting little things that happen just there in that first episode, where the way Serval is resting is very cat-like, I guess.
And it's being played off because they're trying to point out, you know, the way cats would normally cool themselves off after walking a whole lot for a long while. And then it also, you know, goes the other direction by acknowledging that the main character, I call her the main character, but Serval is actually the main character as well. Is it Kabal? Why do I not remember? I just remember vaguely. I don't know. She comments back about how I'm going to call her Cabal, and I'm sorry that I'm probably completely wrong. How she isn't as winded, and it's actually a really good nod to the fact that humans are actually pretty energy efficient walkers, I guess, because like quadrupedal animals, you know, they're like this, and they're pretty much pulling themselves along. Now, it's weird because Serval is actually a cat in a humanoid feature, so normally she would benefit from a lot of that stuff as well. But, you know, that aside, that's one of the interesting things about humans is when you're bipedal, you kind of walk by leaning forward, which means that a lot of your forward momentum comes from just resisting gravity. And you do this, you know, by putting your feet forward like that. And the more you do it, the more you can run out of control or something like that. But, you know, it's basically kind of the closest you can get to being a wheel when you're walking with legs. Because a wheel just keeps going, and basically the legs just keep resisting gravity. I don't know. It's a weird idea. But it's actually, bipedalism is supposed to be pretty energy efficient, and at the same time, because humans are hairless, or mostly hairless usually, and we have sweat glands and stuff like that, we're actually really good at dissipating heat. Like a lot of animals don't have sweat glands, like dogs, you know, they cool off by panting, because getting air in and out of the mouth is pretty much cooling mechanism for dogs. And so that's why, you know, humans can actually, over long distances, really mess up animals just by racing them. Or in the case of hypothesized ancestral stuff, you know, persistence hunting, which is basically you keep following something until it is so exhausted that it has no choice but to try to fight back. But at that point, it's also really exhausted. So when you also take advantage of the fact that you have hands and you can use weaponry, maybe throw things at it or poke it with really sharp sticks, you know, it becomes really hard for animals to deal with that. And it's interesting because in our own horror stuff we kind of have some. Anyways, I'm going on and on a tangent, but the point is, you know, the series establishes really early on that this isn't just the audience that's supposed to be interested in it. The characters are interested in each other too, and it feels like a legitimate interest. And it just all works out. It's actually very nice. It actually has what I wouldn't call a satisfying conclusion. I would say it has a good seasonal ending. And I guess I don't know why I'm making that distinction, because I don't want you to think you watch season 1 and you're like, oh, well, why is there a season 2? But you watch this and you're like, I felt like this is an important break point. If this were a normal 2-core series, that would have been the natural point for the first core. And things like that. It's just good. Really nice. I certainly hope season 2 is not too far behind, because I think that aired more recently, but I'm hoping the fact that Eastern Star got the license means maybe season 2 isn't too far behind. You can hope. And the other anime I watched was Ace Attorney Season 2 Part 1. Actually just the first disc, which covers the first 3 or 4 cases, I think. You know, pretty good. I think I don't remember exactly what I said about the first season, but I feel like it's about the same. It's a good show to watch. The game is definitely better, especially in terms of the music. But the anime is fine. The anime music is fine. You know, you kind of watch it and yeah, it's good. But those games, they have a lot of great stuff going for them. And you know, this is basically, it's not exactly the highlights, but it is shortening some things so that, okay, yeah, here's this. Mostly, I think a lot of the discovery phase, some of the drilling into people that has to happen in the courtroom stuff, but it doesn't feel unnatural. It just feels very anime, which is fine. And so I'm probably going to try and finish this because I do remember, so I think with season 1 we established that the first core pretty much covered the events of the first game. The second core was the events of the second game, and all that stuff seemed to work out fine. And in this one, that makes me think that this part 1 would cover the events of the third game, which means I definitely want to see it to its conclusion. Yeah. And last but not least, I watched Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I think the best thing to say about this game is about this movie is a quote from the first movie, "Let them fight." Because that's kind of the problem you run into with this. The human stuff is and they probably could have done that stuff a whole lot better, but the monsters are really damn cool. It's like, they're pretty, they're different, they are dynamic, the conflict is great. It means the human parts that set up some of the stuff is stupid. And I think a really good example is the beginning of the movie sets up this idea of the alpha wave, and they really shouldn't have called it that, and they should have treated it differently than the way they did, so that the events that got set up could have been what was kind of driving them a little bit behind the scenes anyways. But then instead of this human stuff driving it and it being a distraction from the monsters, it would have been about a good transition from the humans not being sure how to live in this world with the monsters, to the humans really being unsure, to fighting alongside Godzilla, which is pretty much what the trailer shows you the movie does. And I think it's a way of interpreting the movie. And really the issue with the human part is just kind of the same problem with the camera work with the human part, and it's shaky. It's like, there's interesting things that happen, but the order of events, the motivations and stuff are a little too... I think they're a little too thematically at odds with the presence of the monsters, but some of the ideas are thematically in line with how they try to turn things around such that we would believe that people want to coexist with them, I guess. And it's a really I'm hoping I'm being vague enough describing it that way, but yeah. Now, whether or not it's a good movie, I guess it's harder to say, because a whole lot of that stuff depends on how much you can focus on what you need to focus on. I guess a point that the online friend made that is a good point is that the precursor to this movie only had like 5 minutes of Godzilla, and I didn't rewatch it to make sure it was that, but they're pretty much right. It was mostly about not Godzilla, but it was leading up to Godzilla, so calling it Godzilla is fine. But when it comes to we want the monsters to fight, it wasn't bad when it finally got there, but it was also a long time and a lot of why it had to be Godzilla we were rooting for, when most people who watched it were probably waiting for the giant monster to show up in the first place. And I don't know. Well, I forgot what I was saying, because this one felt like there were monsters, and they were great, and I could see how they were inspired by the original Japanese monsters, but at the same time they felt larger than life, which they really needed to. And I don't remember the battling in the first one, but considering this one has more battling, I can say that even though you could just maybe see the battles being not interesting, they somehow stay interesting. It's kind of reminiscent of Iron Man and the Winter Soldier and Captain America in Captain America Civil War, because they had a battle in there that it's like, well, it's these same characters. We've seen their powers a lot. How is this going to be interesting? And it turns out to just be dynamic enough that it just keeps you engaged. And this one's kind of similar. It has enough monsters in it, and they seem to be a little more complex in their political affiliations with each other than monsters would make you think, which means it's definitely many steps above that. They're complex entities, and they are definitely trying to outthink each other and outdo each other in the various battles, and it works out really well. Oh well. So other than that, okay, so obviously I got the graphics card. Let's see, I'm trying to think what's worth mentioning, and I'm also trying to figure out where this piece of plastic went. Again, it was actually, the main goal for it was actually to make sure I just fucking locked down doing graphics on that computer, and when I upgrade VR, I don't see any real issues. Basically, with VR chat, I was seeing some frame drops. I mean, there's almost always frame drops here and there, but there's some noticeable frame drops when the frames drop low enough for you to feel the VR, and it becomes painful. And there's been some mirrors that do that, because the mirrors in the game, cause 2 of every polygon to draw, etc., etc. And I'm actually assuming it's still the same right now. The RTX isn't to try and cheat that. The point of the RTX was actually that I just needed to get something that has really fucking awesome processing power for graphics card. This one has 11 gigabytes of memory, whereas the previous one was only, well, it might not have even been 3. It could have been even smaller than that. I don't remember. So the graphics card itself almost has as much memory as the system itself, which means the system could use some upgrades, right? And yeah, basically, I just want to make sure that sort of stuff got smoothed out, because when I upgrade VR, I mean, I could upgrade it piecemeal, but I'm probably going to do an all-at-once sort of thing. When I do that, the resolution is also going to increase. So I want to make sure whatever graphics card I had can push enough polygons to at least perform as well as my current setup was prior to upgrading to that. But I suspect it's going to be a lot better, because the truth of the matter is 2080 it fucking kicks ass. Not that I have anything to really stress it with, but I've just thrown a couple of test things at it and failed. Now the only thing I've really done to test the ray tracing part of it is, well, technically there's a map in VR chat that supposedly exercises the RTX functionality, and I say supposedly because I don't really know, but it said be wary clicking this button, it may cause extreme lag, and I'm like, okay, click, where's the lag? And it created a couple of spheres, one of them being reflective, and I'm pretty sure, based on the low resolution, I guess, of the reflection on the inside when looking at myself, I think that was probably the ray tracing. It's probably some of the limitations of the ray tracing, or maybe it's not, and maybe there's something else going on there. There's another bubble that was transparent that, was, I think, supposed to illustrate refractive properties. Cool stuff. And I don't know what the third sphere did. It just had that thing in it, so whatever. Or maybe it was that, and I just happened to see it as that. I don't really know. For those of you who are worried about me doing this, well, you don't have to worry. I'm old enough that you have to worry about me putting it below my waist. And since I haven't, you didn't lose any kind of games, okay? But the other thing I've done to test it out RTX-wise is I got a Quake 2 RTX. And, I think a lot of people complained about that one being, 20-year-old game. So ray tracing is up to the progress of 20 years ago, whereas someone like me is like, holy shit, real-time ray tracing is up to the point of 20 years ago. But some of y'all haven't even lived 20 years. Anyways, that's been fun. I went ahead and got the full game, because you can, if you take Quake 2 RTX and point it at an installation of the full game, then you have the availability to play through the full game in RTX. And, I've seen some transparent windows with weird markings on them. I've seen some reflections here and there. if the lighting and the drawing of everything is ray tracing, then it's been looking and running completely smoothly. Maybe not like 120 frames per second smooth, but it could be something like 20 frames per second smooth. Or maybe it's smoother than that, I don't know. Up here in my head, I am probably emulating the wrong kind of gameplay. But you know, it's been pretty cool. If you're curious what I'm planning to do with the old 1060, my plan right now is, since I'm going to be buying a new VR headset, and the 1060 and the old VR headset actually work perfectly well together, I'm basically going to create a portable VR station. What this means is, so like, I might have pointed this out before, but behind me, so I'm part of my company's gaming committee, and one of the things I do is, you know, I help supply games. And why is this? Okay. So for example, I have this here. This has my Super Nintendo, not my SNES Mini. That's actually over here with my NES Classic. But you know, I have my actual Super Nintendo right there. So you know, I have a lot of my gaming stuff set up so that they can be set up, they can be brought somewhere and set up. Now, VR is a lot more difficult just because, you know, I mean, I could always get the Quest, I guess. But I think what I want to do is I want to build another system, and the focus of that one is going to be a little bit more on just the VR stuff. So I might go with a high hertz, not as many cores processor sort of setup, because I don't need it to be a rock star. I just need it to perform pretty well at stuff I throw at it. Mostly some of the simple VR stuff. So basically, I'm not thinking about VR chat, although there will probably be some playing around with VR chat involving that in some manner. It's basically, I need a PC, and I'm gonna have to get a chassis that is really easy for me to carry around from place to place, or I'm going to have to get a better travel chassis of some sort, which I haven't had any luck in finding anything for, especially since, you know, I want to use a full profile GTX in there, which basically means that you're probably looking at your standard ATX chassis, but maybe I can find something where you can put that, where you can use a thing to put that on its side. That would be cool if I could get away with doing that. Maybe make a smaller box, but you know, I guess I'll have to see. I'll have to look at my options out there a little bit more. I'm not exactly done looking, because first I need to get the new VR, and the new VR is going to replace pretty much all the components of the existing VR except for the pucks, because as I understand it, these pucks, because they have the blue triangle on them, support Lighthouse 2.0, which means when I get my plan is to get the Valve Index. When I get the Index, then the new Lighthouse 2.0 stuff that I set up should work perfectly fine with the old pucks, and then I just need the new controllers and new headset and figure all that stuff out. So I'll be able to take those currently existing things, pack them away somehow. Probably it's going to be a thing where that one always has to be multi-trips, but I do need to find a solution for the lighthouses, because I want them to be pretty high up. And I think the thing to do is to go with camera mounts, but camera mounts don't tend to get as high as I would want them to get, so I have to see if maybe there's camera mount extenders. That would actually probably, that sounds like that's probably the case, and that should about do it. If I could add a couple more feet to some of these things, then camera mounts should be fine. But, you know, that's all out in the future. I'm not in a big rush. But one of the reasons I mentioned not being able to stream the 2080 stuff yet is because as long as it's a newer generation processor, I suspect I might be able to do Twitch streaming with that new computer as well, which means, especially if I go with a normal size chassis, I may try to also get an internal card of some sort so it can do some video capturing of its own. You know, maybe something other than the Elgato, or maybe an internal Elgato, because Elgato does have internal stuff. I just have to play around with other software, but that thing could be used to play with other software, and if that as a setup is mobile enough, I would be able to plug it into my network here and maybe take my current computer and plug it into that one, into a video capture on that one, and stream whatever I'm doing through that. That would be pretty cool. But I don't know if I will be able to do that. It will require playing around with. And again, I foresee that being 4 to 5 months out at best. It's even possible I might build the machine 4 to 5 months out, but not go the extra steps of figuring out video capturing for it for another month or 2 or something like that. You know, I'll play around with it. But it's pretty cool stuff, and you know, that 2080 has been pretty cool. Unfortunately, you know, you can probably hear the sound, but that's actually the CPU fan. It's been doing that before. I don't know what causes it to sometimes decide to be quiet and other times to be noisy, but whatever. I haven't heard the graphics card itself. Every time I think I do, it's actually a computer next to that computer. So, that's funny. Anyways, that's this week's Anime DVD Collection update. Y'all, have a nice week.